Today I'm going over a simple approach you can use to flesh out your drawings. We'll work on shape design, details, and adding personality to our characters. If you've drawn a bunch of rough ideas, but you can't get those ideas to the next stage of development, or if you've given up on your art halfway through, then this video is for you. Let's jump into it. I think infusing personality into your piece at this stage, that is more like interesting, like shape design, having like the negative space around the character would be interesting. I think how we break up the character and its silhouette and making sure the shapes are fun and interesting is something that I'm always thinking about. What makes them unique? What makes them different than something else that you might have seen? I think this is the stage where you can get so much of that in, and it's gonna carry through and lay the foundation for the rest of the painting, for the rest of the character. This is the stage to really get that stuff in. And so how do we take this very rough, blocky design up into another version that we can send forward before we start thinking about a lot of little details? And even for these, I actually like to bring the canvas out pretty wide so there's even more breathing room. All right, so we have this character that exists now on its own layer, and I'll actually grab the layer opacity and just put it around maybe like 50%. So usually I have a layer on top of the other one, and I'll really kind of just start marking out more so the anatomy of the character. It's almost like we're just doing small steps from where we were before. And this is where we can kind of start messing with proportions more. And I'm not so worried about the outfit itself. We can start dressing the character up more as we go. Just want to make sure that the underlying anatomy makes sense. And even from before, you stay messy. I still like to be messy at this stage. You know, for me, it helps quite a bit. I don't feel like I really need to lock down on anything yet. It's important for me in my work to stay as loose as possible here, because there's still a lot of things that I don't know about the character and things that I hope we can discover as we paint. Like I start to have some loose ideas of maybe what the outfit could be, what she's doing, hairstyles, you know, even like what race she could be. It's almost like you're still kind of doing gesture drawings, keeping it that loose, and then we can figure out more and more as we go. There's a lot of steps to get your rough ideas into that sweet, beautiful final character design. And you can watch every lesson now in the course. You can check it on out at proko.com/Greco. And so we talked about before in the thumbnail about what she was actually carrying on her back and how that could be some of the rugs that she rolls out and the magical properties of it. And I think so much of that is going to be a huge part of her character. That's going to be a huge part of her silhouette, how she looks. And so I think we need to exaggerate it. Maybe where we had it back here, it actually comes out further. And maybe part of it connects from this over one side of the shoulder strap and this huge strap that will connect over here. Maybe it's like almost like a large canister of rugs that she pulls, or still being just as messy with these shapes, because this is going to give us some more ideas as we go. And so we're just using this background here of the opacity dropped on, just like some small guidelines. We're going to change a lot of it. And one good thing to talk about is flipping your canvas. You probably heard this a lot. It's something that's very important. You want to flip early and flip often. And so we're going to flip it for the first time right now. And it's probably going to be terrifying. You have to do it early and get it figured out. As you can see right here, character looks like they're about to fall over. So sometimes I just grab the whole thing. I don't care about being messy at all, and take the free transform. And I'll just grab like distort. And I'll just kind of like shift the character over. I use the distort and warp tool quite a bit. You know, you can even stretch the character out if we want to change some proportions. This is a great stage to really start messing with it. And the warp tool right here is fantastic also. You can really kind of exaggerate the kind of position of the body. Now I'll do this a lot at this stage. You haven't spent any time rendering anything, so this is the time to do it. I kind of work traditional in the sense that I kind of like to work on top of everything that existed before. I think it adds to a nice base and gives a lot of life to it underneath. So I never minded having that exist underneath there. Because basically you can start taking some of this lighter value and start cutting out even some parts if you would like to, if it makes it easier for you to read. Like I said, there's a lot of the elements of like when we were working on the thumbnails of like how loose it can be and incorporating it into this stage as well. We're basically just doing kind of a modified version. You know, you can slow down, start figuring out a little bit more of kind of feet placement. Probably one of my favorite parts of any painting is this stage right here. There's still so much freedom on what it could be. And it's nice, you get to spend kind of a lot longer on this stage than previous one. Like, I like to keep my hands going pretty quick, but you're allowed to mentally slow down and kind of figure some things out. Like, I don't want to get bogged down onto any type of details, like worrying about like face rendering or anything. You can get like a couple small things. You want to line up where the ear and hair might be or anything like that, but you can still keep it loose. We'll try a whole bunch of different hairstyles. I'm always love if I can incorporate long hair into any design as much as any character team, because that is something that will always have to be taken into consideration when you're painting. So what's great about, at least for me, having this like little sketchiness is it still gives me strange little ideas of mistakes I might have made. Or not really mistakes, but they're just kind of like the loose mess. And it kind of tells me of what something could be that I didn't think of before. It's like every little thing is like strange little happy accidents. And it's like, how do I interpret that? And does it give me an idea for something else? And once we have a solid base, then we can really start figuring out like outfit design, equipment, everything. And this is exactly the process I go through almost every single day. And then, this translates into like creatures too, like even if they're not humanoid characters, if they're a type of like beast or monster, all the silhouette changes and design, all that stuff works the exact same. Armor sets, weapons, there's a lot of things that we tackle on the character team. There's a lot of things that I have to tackle as a concept artist. There's a lot of those things as well. Pets, mounts. And then I think if you think of all those things as trying to have the same personality as a character, what makes them unique, this process exists for all those things. And we're just slowly going around and figuring out the character out a little bit more and more. Sometimes these little subtle shapes can make a big difference. I think it's important at this stage also to stay pretty zoomed out. As you can see that like I'm not getting bogged down in any details. I'm not working, this close in yet. None of those small details right now are not very important. There's so much of this character that we just have not figured out. That's very, very important. This is a great part about any type of piece or project that you're working on where a lot of these little pieces start coming together and it starts getting pretty exciting. And it's like at that stage in the painting where you really don't want to stop painting. You just want to kind of disappear into it for a few hours, which we all know is pretty nice. But there's things we have to think about too. How is this actually hanging off her back? Is it going to actually drape over the front? Is it attach something on her back? There has to be kind of a realistic way of doing this, because this is something that's going to come up as you continue on to the character team. And if they have to figure out how to model it, how does it sit, how does it animate? Is there actually like going to be any physics attached to it as she walks around? Is it gonna like jostle about or do anything? These are definitely things and questions that we have to answer. And it's definitely not something we can ignore. We can't just put something in there because it looks cool. It's important to have something in there that works, that's functional, and it's a real, actual thing. Then you see, sometimes I'll start getting rid of some of the sketch underneath. Sometimes, for me, it can get a little distracting if it's too much of a mess. But like even stuff like this right here is enough, or I just know the position of certain things, so that can work. And something from your designers, you may actually have a better picture. They might, be like, oh, this is a race that we already have designed. This is going to be in their major city. And then you kind of know a little bit better. Yeah, so for me, I'm just getting a lot of base down of the body, everything about her, before we figure out a lot of these smaller details. So as we go here, I look at it and I think we have to break up the silhouette just like a little bit more. So I think there's some stuff we can do and figure out something that might exist for like a single like shoulder pad on this shoulder that kind of connects in. I just want to think of some type of like a little bit more asymmetrical design with her, but you were still able to kind of stay pretty loose with it all right now. And these are kind of just generic shapes we can throw in here because I want to fill it up with something, but not have so much detail that it's super distracting. And then maybe we find a design motif that works and we can help carry that through the rest of the painting. It's also important to think about as we do this, like say she had like one shoulder pad on one piece here, how does that help her character be this traveling merchant? Right now, it doesn't really seem like it's fulfilling that goal. I think it's always important to think back to that initial design idea and make sure we are kind of embracing those ideas still. I think there's still more stuff to add to the side to make it a little more interesting. I think something we could afford on the project, something that kind of dangles off down here. Yeah, I know like a lot of limits of stuff that we work on, especially on the Warcraft team, where we might be able to afford like a couple bones and have this, you know, animate down here as it dangles off the side of this. And so really I'm going around and just trying to find interesting shapes that I like, and then we'll try to bleed those into how does it work? And then how do we kind of marry those two ideas at the same time as we go? And how do we make her outfit more and more interesting as we continue? But as you see, I'm kind of like erasing, drawing on top, erasing, drawing on top. I'm cleaning up parts, sketching more line on top. Like I said, I love doing a lot of this line work still. And then as we go, I actually don't like her arm sitting over here. So we're just gonna like detach her entire arm. Maybe it'd be better if she had her hand more over here. You know, sometimes I'll just block in these hands with these very simple shapes at first. It just gives me an idea of where it is. I don't have to get like too bogged down into like, you know, a lot of the fingers, and we're just getting kind of just like knuckle shapes and hands, and we can worry about all that later. And let's at least darken up parts of this so it just reads a little bit better off of everything else. Like I said, you don't have to get too crazy with your poses. They can be real simple. They can just be standing there. You want to hide too much, so something later I might have to like, you know, actually figure out her other arm. And I'm gonna take some of the pieces of her clothing and kind of like make it a little bit baggier. So it kind of comes out from some of these folds, like the belt, if it pinches here, what happens with the shirt? Like when I say slow down, you know, try to have more kind of purposeful mark making and kind of conscious thought about what each little piece is going to be. We're not getting bogged down in any details yet. I think it's worth spending the time here because a lot of decisions are being made that will carry out through the rest of the piece. Once you've drawn one detailed thumbnail, you're not done. You want to draw at least 2 more and really push your idea into new directions. You'll probably find that your next drawings feel even better than your first, and you may even go into directions that you hadn't even thought about before you even started. Run with that energy. The more iterations you do, the more you'll be pushing yourself out of cliches, and the better you'll understand your character. In the premium course, I go into more detail on drawing character variations and walk you through the hardest part, coloring and rendering. We go through every step a concept artist takes to bring a character from the idea stage into an awesome looking final that can go into your portfolio, or comic, or game. We tackle monsters and bosses, and we work really hard to imbue every student's pieces with story and interesting elements that will draw the viewer in. You can check out the full course at proko.com/Greco.